Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Digital Nomad World Weekly Lecture. Hi, Martin. Welcome to the show. So, I'm Becky, for those of you who don't know, and this is Martin McPhilimey. And he's going to talk about performance through health and how to reduce stress, something I'm sure we can all relate to some degree. Welcome, Martin.
Thank you very much for having me on today. I appreciate it.
Oh, I'm so excited to hear about this topic. I'm sure a lot of people can improve their lives through what you have to tell us today. So, first of all, can you give us a little bit, tell us about your background and your background related to performance through health?
Yeah, sure. I guess I spent a decade as a sleep and respiratory scientist, both in the public and the private healthcare system over in the UK initially through the NHS. That's where I trained. And then I moved over to Australia in 2016 and worked for a private health company over there for uh, 6 years. And during that time, essentially, I was working with people with sleep issues and with breathing issues. However, I would say roughly 50 to 60% of the people that I saw in the private health industry, their issues were actually related to stress and anxiety, not kind of pathology related issues that a doctor would see. But they really didn't have anywhere to go other than maybe going to see a psychologist. But a psychologist only really sees people with severe mental health issues and not necessarily issues that related or could be due to stress. So as I started to see that over the years, I was like, okay, well, I'm seeing people burning out at the age of 40 to 50 and really not being able to perform and go through their whole life's work without having to make sacrifices. And those sacrifices are either in their health or in their work. So the concept performance through health is essentially putting your health first in three categories. Number one is sleep. Number two is ensuring that you have efficient breathing. And number three is ensuring that you have positive stress management in your life. And that's to create more sustainability in people's life performance. So that's the concept behind that.
Wow, so many places to go with this. I guess we should
Mm.
talk about sleep first. Let's start with what you mentioned first as part of your performance through health consultancy. So, how can people improve? Well, first of all, let me go back before I ask this. Why is it so important to get good sleep, Martin?
Yeah, well, sleep is one of those things that hasn't really been thought about in the health industry, or you get a personal trainer. It's usually diet, exercise, or one of those two things. But we're really starting to see now that sleep is at the foundation of all health. And if you, no matter how much you diet and know how much you exercise, if you don't really get good sleep, you don't get the full benefits of those two things. And actually, there isn't a single physiological component in the body or process in the body that's not affected by having good sleep or poor sleep. Because at the end of the day, what sleep is really a nice reset for our nervous system, for our brain, and for our body. So the importance of sleep is essentially at the foundation. And because it's something that we have, I guess, taken for granted because it's just an evolutionary process, no, it's a behavior, we haven't really paid attention to it. But now over the last, say, 50 years, which is new in terms of research, there's been more and more research coming out to say that the world is getting less sleep on average, and the quality of that sleep has been disturbed because of the likes of artificial light and living indoors rather than being outdoors. And that's having a huge impact on things like chronic disease, so diabetes, insomnia, heart issues, even things like asthma and inflammatory issues. They're all issues related to having poor sleep at the foundation. So it really is important that we have that as a part of not just only our health, but in terms of performing our best and feeling our best. We all know that getting a good night's sleep, you feel much better when you're rested.
Yeah, I'm wondering too, like there's so many misconceptions. There's so many, like we might call them wives' tales or things out there about
Mm.
sleep. Of course, one of them is that you should get 8 hours of sleep a night. Is that true, or does each person require a different amount of sleep per night, would you say, to have a good and reliable night's sleep?
Yeah, I think it really, when we look at the scientific data, we're looking at groups of individuals or individuals on the whole, and we would say, look, there is a 7 to 9 hours that most people need. But really, if you're looking at the individual's lifestyle, if someone is more stressed than usual, they might need more sleep to recover. So, for example, if you've got an athlete who is training as hard as they can 5 days a week or multiple times a day, versus a little old lady that's not really doing much around the house and is probably doesn't need as much recovery. There's going to be a difference on the level there. So one might be more towards the 9 to 10 hours, whereas the other one might be more towards the 6 to 7 hours. But overall, we do say, where's that average fit? That's the 8 hours. So that's where the 8 hours does come from. And it's just a safe space to go for general advice.
Okay, so I'm going to go next to how can we get a good night's sleep? How can a person, for example, who's very stressed, you said they might need more sleep to recover. How can they calm themselves down to get that good night's sleep?
I guess when you first start looking at sleep, you've got to look at it as two things. Like I've already mentioned, sleep is a process that we have to go through, but that means that we have to like over the period of the day, we get a buildup of metabolic waste for our brain from energy breakdown. That process is a buildup of what's called adenosine, and that basically tells our brain to wire down and make us feel sleepy at nighttime. So if we're consistent in the time we get up and we're consistent with kind of things like meals times and exercise, we can actually make sure we get the same amount of that adenosine throughout the day. Now, caffeine or coffee is a stimulant that actually blocks those receptors in our brain, so it makes us feel more awake at nighttime. So things like when people are stressed and tired, they usually go for caffeine and coffee. So avoiding that in the evenings is going to help get some good sleep. But also one of the most important and crucial things you can do is actually when you wake up in the morning, and not many people do this nowadays, is actually get natural sunlight in your eyes for 10 to 15 minutes, even 20 minutes as the sun is rising, if possible, because the spectrum of light as the sun rises is the perfect level in the sky for our eyes to detect the morning light, and the colors of the spectrum of actually light actually helps our circadian rhythm kind of sink into when cortisol should be increasing, making us feel more alert, and 12 hours later, melatonin kind of being released from our brain to make us initiate sleep. So being consistent in your morning routine, getting up and getting sun out in your eyes, and then being consistent, having a wind down evening routine is going to allow your body's natural circadian rhythm to kind of stick to your behaviors. And you mentioned what can people do to calm and relax in the evenings. There's many things we can do. So one of the whole components of what I do for my coaching and consultancy is actually helping people develop breathing protocols to calm themselves and to learn how to manage their energy and stress through different breath work practices. So you can implement some of those in the evenings, some gentle, calm and relaxing, slow, steady breathing, getting out from those as a part of a routine that is all about winding the lights down, dimming down, making the environment around you darker, cooler, and more relaxing. Doing that on a consistent basis is going to allow you to really get your stress levels down and help you get to sleep.
Okay. Are there any tools that you use, like any things you can buy to help with that? These things you've mentioned?
To buy, I mean, there's free things that you could actually get. So there's sleep meditations, and there's something called a non-sleep deep rest protocols, which if you actually go onto my YouTube channel, I've made a couple of them, and they are basically taken from Yoga Nidra, and they are a form of a guided meditation where your body you'll scan your body, and the process of scanning the body and turning your senses internal tricks your brain into going into a sleep state. And you can actually look for non-sleep deep rest protocols for sleep. And the end of the meditation will guide you into sleep rather than trying to wake you back up again. So that's a free applicable tool that anyone can use if they are struggling to get to sleep, or if they've had a poor night's sleep and they want to rejuvenate that in their energy levels in the morning. Doing one of those for 20 minutes is going to be very beneficial.
Okay. I had a friend who he bought some LED lights that he would put in his bedroom. Would you recommend something like that? I think he was using red lights and he said those were
Yeah.
good for
Yeah.
getting
So
your calming down.
there's different lights you can use. Obviously, we're speaking to digital nomad people now. So if people are in the world where perhaps it's winter or the light doesn't come up until 10 a.m., 11 a.m., and people are already set up, is they can actually get bright lights, artificial lights in the morning, and buy those artificial lights. And just as soon as they wake up, get lights on so they can actually utilize that rather than natural lights. But then in the evenings, yes, there is potentially a little bit of evidence to suggest that red light therapy can help, or at least using red lights rather than bright lights in the evening is going to be more beneficial, because you don't get the blue light that's going into your eyes, which is going to stimulate more cortisol in the nighttime rather than the melatonin which we want to release to be able to get to sleep.
Okay. And how bad is using our phones at night? You hear a lot about this. Is it actually that bad with disrupting our sleep, or is it okay?
I think it is. Like, at the end of the day, I think nowadays both Netflix and social media are competing with sleep. That's their two biggest competitors on the market. People
Yeah.
are spending majority of time. Netflix is literally made so that you don't even have to touch the laptop anymore, and it will run through a whole series. So people will stay up until 3 a.m. just watching, getting caught in the action there. But then you go back to the phones. Similarly, people procrastinate now. There's sleep procrastinations. Like, people don't go to sleep until they've finished scrolling on their phone. And that could be half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour, however long. And so a lot of the clients I have to work with, if you're a business coach or a digital nomad, that is like I am, your clients are coming through your social media and through your phone often. And it becomes a part of your life where the structure of using your phone is really important to not get hooked into the message every 5 minutes receiving from a new client or a potential lead. But that can continue to 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. So that is then, not only are you getting bright light in your eyes, but the actual movement of flicking through different photos, different videos is just consistently shifting our focus. We've never been in a period in our lifetime where our focus has gone from, looking at someone at the beach, or then going to someone at the gym, then going to a piece of news, then going to like the content that our brains have to switch over to. It struggles to make people be able to switch off their thoughts nowadays. It's insane. So yes, having that, and often I do this, is like I usually say to people to say, have a time period where you're willing to commit and say to yourself that the phone is no longer going to be used. Use the environment itself as the phone's not going to be in the bed, and then have the phone the other side of the bedroom, so you're not then wanting to go and pick it up after laying down for 5 minutes.
Great advice that I myself will also take. How do you feel about naps? Are they good to have? Should we try to just get the sleep at night, or how rejuvenative are they?
Again, coming down to a generalization, if naps are before 2 p.m., they can be useful. Naps can be useful if an individual knows that perhaps they're going to get a short period of sleep. Say, for example, they're working till late in the evenings, they have to get up early in the morning. Having a nap around 1 p.m., 2 p.m. probably is going to be beneficial. And in fact, it's going to reduce the health burdens of not getting that poor night's sleep. And it's going to help you rejuvenate your performance as well. So there's a positive there. Naps are also very beneficial if an individual is highly stressed and they can't get their sleep in. And it allows you just to recover and get your body into a rest and digest state for a period of time. But I would usually say not to nap for longer than maybe 30 or 40 minutes, because then you're going to start getting into a full sleep cycle, and that can then start to disturb your sleep cycles in the evenings.
Okay, great advice again. I'm also curious about jet lag, which I'm sure is something that comes up with digital nomads that may speak with you. So how can we help with our jet lag when we're constantly changing time zones?
Yeah, I mean, we've kind of got to accept that it's always going to happen to a certain extent. But I guess preparing beforehand, before the flight, just really honing in on having the time that you're going to be landing, the time zone that you're going to be flying into, maybe in your phone. So every now and then you can just check in. So you start to build awareness into your conscious clocks that the time zone is different. Then you can start to actually, the 2 to 3 days before, is see if you can start to shift your meal times onto the future time zone you're going to be in. And then particularly when you fly, if you're flying and it's nighttime in the new time zone, try and sleep on that flight. If you land and it's like morning time, then try and get outside, try and stay awake. Again, get that light in your eyes, or whenever you can, as soon as you land. If it's going to be morning, get that light in your eyes straight away, and then try and be consistent with your behaviors as soon as possible. And I think one of the most important aspects that I've found for being a digital nomad, I've been a digital nomad for a year now, and I've traveled for 4 or 5 different countries, 6 different countries in that period. And for me, it's about getting in and getting this workspace set up straight away, creating that environment straight away, then going, okay, right, knowing where my nearest habits are. So I like to work out. So where's my nearest gym? I like to do some breathing sessions. So where's my environment for me to be able to do that? And then start to implement those habits straight away, and then work around those habits to create some structure so your rhythms get into that sync of your natural habits.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And that
Mm.
makes me also think of, so you're talking about breathing exercises. Is there other kinds of physical exercise that you recommend also for helping us sleep better or reduce stress?
Yeah, so I mean, even talking about jet lag as well, if you're struggling with jet lag, getting some kind of short, high intensity exercise in the morning is going to allow your body to naturally boost some cortisol and help create that rhythm of cortisol early in the morning. Cold showers is a positive one that you can use as well for setting your rhythms. But in terms of the actual question that you were saying about exercise and improving your sleep, generally the advice is that low to moderate intensity exercise is going to be very beneficial for sleep. That process that I talked about at the very beginning of energy breaking down and creating adenosine, um, exercise is the stimulus or main stimulus we have to break down energy. So we're going to get more of that build up. So exercise itself is positive to helping us get to sleep and remain asleep. However, if you're a highly stressed individual and you're starting to put your high intensity exercise in the evenings and you're struggling with your sleep, I would say switch that out in the mornings and remove that away, because that's going to be a hindrance, especially if we're starting to see cortisol levels higher in the evenings. We want to try and remove those, anything that's going to create stress activity later on. We want to remove those and try to replace those with relaxation protocols.
Okay, you've reminded me of something that I meant to ask you that I think a lot of people might want to know. You mentioned caffeine before. Should we drink coffee in the morning or not?
Yeah. I mean, I was just having this conversation with my partner today because she said she's seeing so many people say they're going caffeine free and not drinking coffee anymore. I don't think there's a negative to having coffee. I think actually there's some positive health benefits to having a small to moderate amount of coffee. However, there is a little hack that you can use to make your coffee or caffeine more efficient at making you feel your energy for longer. Now, remember me saying at the very beginning that adenosine in the brain is what causes us to feel sleepy, and it's
Mhm.
caffeine that competes with that adenosine in the receptors in our brain. When you first wake up in the morning, there's still some of that adenosine left in the brain, so the caffeine can't get into there. So if you delay that period by roughly 45 minutes to an hour, the caffeine is going to have more of effect on your brain because it's able to get into those free receptors in the brain and activate those more, which is going to allow you to keep the caffeine energy high for a longer period of time. So actually not taking caffeine or having your coffee immediately in the morning, getting some light in your eyes, 30 minutes wait, 45 minutes wait, then having your coffee is going to be actually an additional benefit to what we'd call the performance aids of coffee.
Oh, but Martin, what about all those people that say, I can't even function without my coffee first thing when I get up?
I would say cold shower is just as just as beneficial, honestly. And it's one of those, there's so many benefits to cold showers that people think I can't do this. And number one, okay, telling yourself a story that you can't do something that you can then go and do or try to do for 30 seconds, isn't that a hurdle that you've ever overcame and you've been able to start to build resilience? But then it will actually start to trigger your ability to produce cortisol early in the morning without needing caffeine. So it's like an easy way to, especially if you want to come away from coffee or caffeine, it's an easy kind of like, well, I say easy, it's a challenging but positive of a habit that you could potentially use to boost your energy in the morning.
You're challenging me, Martin, and I can definitely see how that would wake someone up really well, even without the coffee.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'm going to try it tomorrow. I'm going to try it. All right, and along the lines of coffee or food, is there any food that we can have that will help us sleep better and or also keep our stress at a manageable level?
Yeah, so in terms of stress, I think generally making sure that you eating enough food is
Mhm.
definitely one of the big things that people need to watch out for, especially if you're, again, going back to the entrepreneur, digital nomad type, is some people can be very busy starting off their businesses. And they, some of the clients I work with just say, I just don't really get time to eat. I forget about it. And it's like, well, that's no wonder why you're feeling fatigued and stressed, is your body is having to run off its own resources rather than food. And if you're an individual who doesn't have a lot of resources, you're a slim individual, there's not a lot of energy to use. So making sure you eat enough, but then not making, on the other side, not over consuming food as well, because obesity will lead to inflammation and further stress in the body. So that's just the amount of food. Now, is there any particular foods that can help us reduce stress? Yes, omega-3s, fish oils, those sort of things that will bring down inflammation. Inflammation and stress together in the body are very detrimental to our health and how we perform. So adding omega-3 oils is a very simple way to bring down that stress. And then, is there any particular foods that help us in the evening? Potentially, if you're struggling to sleep, you can do two things. Are you eating too late at nighttime, or are you not eating closer to nighttime enough? And if so, consuming a small amount of carbohydrates at night can actually help increase what we call tryptophan, which is a protein that produces melatonin and helps us feel more calm. So we can actually implement, and sometimes I do that with clients. If they don't eat often enough, I will say, okay, well, roughly an hour before you go to bed, maybe have a small bowl of porridge or something like that, which can actually just help make a relaxation feeling in the body, and make sure that in the night you're not feeling like you're getting hungry or your blood sugars are not dropping. One last thing, I guess, is there any particular actual foods that can help with sleep? There is something called tart cherry juice, and it's probably the only food that actually has melatonin in it. There's a small little bit of scientific literature that to say that it can help initiate sleep and help people with sleep, but it's quite hard to find, especially in countries that don't have tart cherry juice or that the actual cherry plant itself.
I was going to say, I've very rarely seen that. Is it something you can buy online as like an extract or a powder as well?
Yeah, you might be able to. I've not actually looked into it myself. I know you could get hold of it in Australia. Now it's where I was residing for the last, before the last year. So, and we could get it there. And I love the taste of it. You can only drink a small amount because it's so high in sugar. But it's I couldn't find it in the UK when I was over in the UK. So there might be supplements now. I think, given the fact that most people, when they see a little bit of scientific literature, they will jump on board and make a supplement for it. But yeah, we'll have to check it out. And if there is, maybe I can jump on Amazon or something like that and try and find the link and put it in the show notes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we will make sure that is put in there. So I'm wondering, you said you've been a digital nomad for about a year. What challenges did you face, if you have any personal examples of how you had to adjust your sleep, or did you start to find it was harder to focus? Because as I know, it's a big lifestyle change, and for new nomads out there, all the tips we can get will be very helpful.
Yeah, of course. I think when I first shifted over, it was interesting because I was going from working 9 till 5 with patients, then working on my own business in the evenings, trying to work out and trying to have a social life. So a very busy life. So then move into a small little island called Penida, which is just off the side of Bali, where it's just was slow. It was like, okay, now it's just me and my laptop and my choices of how often I work. So it was like, it taught me a lesson in terms of how, okay, I need to slow down, but also I need to build in those structures of when I'm going to be working. And what I think can happen, and often does happen when people move into the digital nomad the digital nomad lifestyle, is they can start to feel like it's a bit more of a holiday. And then it drags out like a holiday. It drags out like a holiday for too long, and then you still got to realize that, especially when you're starting a business, that there has to be a lot of time put into trying to get content and creating that business and getting behind. And those first year of doing it is going to be just as hard work, but it's just you have the freedom to do it where you like to do it. So I think there's like not falling into the trap of just, okay, I feel like I'm free, I'm on a holiday, and then just utilizing it like a holiday, but also trying to make it like a lifestyle, and getting the balance between the two is then the most challenge that I think most people will grasp. Where I could sit behind a desk and work for a long time, and and my partner said to me, you haven't been to the beach in 3 or 4 days, and it's like, okay, well, let's go to the beach. But I can get into that habit, whereas other people were the opposite. Beach every single day, and I'll just work once a week. So it's finding that, I think, that balance again, to make sure that you're able to sustain the lifestyle.
Yeah, I've also found that some people, they want to go out because it's light and like, let's enjoy the day. And then I'll just do all of my work at night if that's a possibility with their job. And then perhaps I would imagine, from what you've been telling us, that they're getting too active. They're stimulating their brain too much, trying to do perhaps very difficult tasks later at night. And I would imagine that could
Mm.
cause them to have sleep trouble.
Yeah, certainly. If you're psychologically switching your work time to a time where biologically you're meant to be sleeping, that's going to present some friction in terms of a mix up between your psychology and your biology, which is then going to lead to sleep issues, which is what insomnia essentially is.
Yeah, and I know a lot of nomads too. They sadly get into a work situation where they have fixed hours and a fixed time zone, despite being
Mm.
able to go anywhere in the world. Do you have any advice for people like that? For example, someone who's in Thailand working on US hours, and I've seen these people at the co-working space at 2 in the morning, and I feel really sorry for them. Do you have any advice for how they can find some kind of balance and sleep schedule
Yeah,
that works?
I think it's controlling the controllables that you can control. So if that's out of your schedule of your work is at X time zone, the rest of the time zone is like, okay, trying to schedule in that sleep so it's consistent, trying to schedule in when you wake up and get light in your eyes as being consistent, and really your exercise routine, if you have one, and your even your eating habits are all small ways that you can actually help to, I guess, entrain a clock in your body. So that's what you can do. And then just making sure that you're physically writing down and journaling and planning your day out so that you just know that when work finishes, you know that you can go to that next thing without having to think, okay, well, what's next? That's going to be very crucial for people on a different time zone, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you recommend taking melatonin for sleep and or sleeping pills?
Okay. So melatonin, let's start with that one. Melatonin is going to be potentially positive when you're trying to shift your time zone. So again, going back to the jet lag sort of stuff. Now, yes, taking it if it's a prescription melatonin. If you're buying it over the counter, there's going to be a fluctuation in terms of the strength it's going to be, because it's not a lot of over the counter stuff isn't kind of, I guess, certified or checked, whereas prescription stuff will be. So the answer, yes, using it if you want to change your time zone or when your sleep zone is, but being consistent and taking your melatonin at the right time and being consistent at the right time. So again, you're trying to create a behavior, and that's what melatonin essentially is creating. It's like creating a sleep behavior. So if all of a sudden you land in a time zone and you party until 12 o'clock at night time, you take a melatonin at 1 o'clock in the morning, then the following day you go to bed at 9 o'clock and you take a melatonin at 8 a.m. And then the next day you take one, you're basically just sending hormones into your body all over the place. So there is going to be, a discipline to begin with using melatonin to say, okay, well, actually, if I'm going to sleep at 10, I'm going to take it at 8:39 and keep that schedule for at least the first 5 to 7 days of landing. And then take the melatonin out and no longer use it. In terms of actual sleep medication, if you cannot get sleep and you've tried everything in terms of your behaviors and all that sort of stuff, and you're stressed and you're burnt out, you need to get to sleep, then there's going to be a short period where they're going to be beneficial to help you get that rest. And that's where only really I'm not advising people to do it because I'm not a medical professional, but in my opinion of being a scientist and looking at the literature, where I would be comfortable with someone doing that if they were my client. Otherwise, I would then be trying to get them off those medications and start building the proper behaviors and changing their relationship to sleep.
Thank you very much for explaining that. I want to talk finally about Performance Through Health, your online consultancy. So how does it work if I want to be a client? Do you usually have a certain period of time you work with clients, or it varies? And how long do you work together for each
Yeah,
session, let's
so
say?
I basically have 4 different services that I offer. One is very basic breathing retraining to help people with stress and anxiety. And that's focused all around creating functional breathing patterns. And that is 5 sessions over 8 weeks. Now, it would be all over Zoom for roughly 20 minutes. And then there's a more in-depth kind of 8-week one-on-one coaching that is catch up every single week. And that is to help people really empower their performance through stress management, sleep, and breathing efficiency. And that's to really educate the individual on discovering their only ways to manage their stress, because everyone responds differently to different things. So we work together to do that. Then there's let's say there's 3, then that would be 8 weeks. Then there's my mentorship, which is the physiological and biological health component, along with helping individuals form really kind of a strategy and a vision for their life. And it takes them to a bit more life coaching values and figuring out who they are, what they want to do, and then starting to build a plan of how to do that. So it's taking people from really anxious states or burnt out states to becoming a more sustainable performer again. And it's all online. Yeah.
All online for us digital nomads. Perfect. And I'm sure, I know you're enjoying having a job that you can travel all over the world with, because I know, like you said, it's just your first year and it sounds like it's going really well.
Yeah, I mean, it's going from a full-time wage to then going all in on your own business. You know, it's a scary process, especially the cash flow is not coming in quite fast. But again, it's having that trust that you can do it if you're committed to the work and continue to do the work and continue to put yourself out there, create the content. It's work with coaches and work with people that they know how to help. Then I'm in a position now where I'm earning a wage that's allowing me to and I have a decent wage. So yeah, I'm happy and I'm excited for the future as well.
That is wonderful. And I really want to make sure that people can follow you here. So if people want to follow you or get access to some of your training, where can they go?
Yeah, so my website, they can check out everything on there, which is www.performancethroughhealth.com. And then all over social media, it's the same. If you type in performance through health in Google, you're going to find my face absolutely everywhere: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. But mainly I'm mostly active on Instagram. Again, that's performance through health. So reach out to me on there. And yeah, we can book an initial call and do some run assessments and see whether my coaching services would be correct for anyone who's looking to manage their stress and perform better.
Thank you so much, Martin. I know you've inspired me to take a cold shower tomorrow as a first start and see how I go from there. And I hope all of you who've been listening have found some tips and strategies that you can start using as well. And also, you can find Martin on Instagram, like you said, Performance Through Health. Thank you, Martin.
No worries. Thank you very much, Becky.